And the second it hit, I could hear it pop.
So I shattered my femur and my pelvis.
As they were coming over, I started realizing, like, your thigh is swelling up like a balloon. Okay, this is pretty severe.
The femur is the longest and strongest bone in your body, and 1 month ago today, I broke it. I never expected to be one of the climbers leaving a gym in an ambulance, and there I was in shock, denial, and a lot of pain. Many of you asked what happened, and I wanted to give you a thorough explanation. Plus, I wanted to get some insight from others who have gone through a similar journey. Just a warning, some of the content in this video may be graphic or disturbing. In this video, I'll give you the full rundown of my femur fracture. We'll hear from other athletes who have not only recovered, but are thriving post-recovery, and we'll look into what I can expect with my new bionic lifestyle. To give you some context, Sunday, March 5th, when I broke my femur, I had only been in my new home of Austin, Texas, about 3 weeks. Things were looking up. I'd finally moved to my dream spot, and there are endless activities here, so much for me to cover as a roving reporter for Alien Space. As we know, Cybertrucks will be delivered soon, Starship is set to fly, and I was in the right place at the right time finally, until I wasn't. Holding on to an orange rock climbing route in an indoor bouldering gym, I grabbed up for the next hold, twisted my knee. Yeah. Have you ever heard the sound of a bone snap? It's unmistakable, unforgettable, and in my case, it happened way easier than I ever thought would be possible, especially since this was bouldering inside, where you're surrounded by pads, there's no need for a helmet or harness. My femur didn't actually break from the fall, though. It broke from the twist on the wall, so while I broke it in the gym, it isn't really related to climbing. The day started normal enough, minus the nagging and persistent pain I'd been experiencing in my leg for going on 2 weeks. I was hanging out with my friend Ryan Tanaka, who runs his own YouTube channel focused on Neuralink. We decided to go climbing, and while I knew I couldn't run on my knee in its current state, I'd climbed just the day before for hours outdoors. It seemed like it'd be fine to climb. Fast forward, we arrived at the gym, and within 10 minutes of being there, I was suddenly in the worst pain of my life.
You got on the wall just like you did for the first route, like doing your thing, just kind of showing me like how a more advanced climber would climb a route.
I had done one warm-up route and started a second route in the gym.
After like a couple holds in, I was watching you just like fall to the ground slowly. I didn't think it was a big deal because it was only like 4 or 5 feet up in the air onto a 1 to 1.5 foot padded mat.
But I knew as soon as I heard that snap that I had broken something. I thought it was my knee. That's where the most prominent pain had been for the past few days.
As time went on, like I started realizing like, okay, you're in more pain than I thought you would have been. Because I knew that for the week and 2 weeks prior, you had a compromised knee. Like even earlier, I think it was 2 hours before we went climbing, you were pointing to the part on your knee that was hurting and said, you feel some of the pain like crawling up towards your thigh.
Femur injuries can actually kill. For some, the femoral artery is severed, leading to unconsciousness and then bleeding out. I'm really amazed I didn't pass out from the pain.
You were kind of like frozen, but you knew what was going on. It's just crazy to me now afterwards, seeing how curved it was and also how short it was.
Now, unfortunately, I don't have video of the accident, which is unique. I've had a lot of my accidents on camera, including getting kicked in the head by a horse and needing 9 staples. This was years ago.
Good job, Eliana.
While I lack video of this, and yes, I called and asked if they had cameras in that spot of the gym, I can at least illustrate for you the motion of my left knee, the culprit of my fracture, my beloved drop knee maneuver. And you can see just how much torque rock climbing can apply to the leg. Now, I've been using this type of move for years, and I firmly believe because my knee was already hurting, likely a hairline fracture that I tried to push through, that twisting was just enough to break the bone. the longest and the strongest bone in your body. A side note about more old injuries. This leg has gone through a lot. I tore several ligaments in my left ankle years ago, and I was stepped on by a horse when I was 12, leading to a horseshoe-shaped scar and scar tissue already in that area.
I do feel a little bit dizzy.
Okay.
That's okay. It's your first time getting out of bed, so that's very normal. That's why I asked. If you feel like it's getting worse, it is. Okay. Do you want to lay back down? I don't know.
I had a displaced spiral fracture. So how do they fix this? My doctor went up from my knee area and inserted a titanium rod with screws. Femur fractures almost always require surgery. The most common way to stabilize or fix your broken femur is to place a metal rod inside the hollow center tube of your femur. Now, typically one or more screws will be placed through holes in the rod above and below the fracture. Because the rod and screws are placed using X-ray guidance, doctors can usually perform the surgery through several small incisions or cuts in your skin. I have 5 incision sites. The rod and screws will stabilize your broken femur, and often you will be allowed to put weight on your injured leg right after surgery. So I was assigned partial weight-bearing status. This accident has not only forced me to surrender to things I'm afraid of, like going under general anesthesia, but it's also led me to connect to a lot of strangers. One of my first nights home, I wanted to read recovery stories from athletes, not just WebMD articles and potential recovery timelines. So I found an old ESPN interview with Chad Kagi. He's an X Games athlete who in 2011 during Big Air Finals, his season ended with a broken femur from a flare whip. So of course, the reporter in me wanted to hear his story.
You look like you're in an apartment, not out in space.
No. Chad Kagi is an X Games gold medalist, Nitro Circus athlete, and probably the most bionic man I have ever talked to.
I had some removed. I'm down to about 29 pieces of metal.
And he's sort of an expert in getting injured.
Recovering from injuries when you can do the little things. I went for a walk and you're like, I will never take walking for granted again.
His injury was made worse actually in the hospital.
I had a doctor screw up. He lifted my leg thinking it was my tib fib and he pivoted my femur where it was broken. Oh. And then I went into shock and it went the other way. So I had heavy scar tissue. It took me 2 weeks until I could bend my knee enough to actually sit in a chair. So I couldn't fly home.
Unlike my experience of a routine warm-up turning into a major bone break, Chad knew he was about to be hurt as soon as he left the ramp for his trick.
I knew the second I left the ramp that I was crashing. But the way that I train and practice is I figure out how to do a trick and then I learn how to crash the trick in the beginning, middle, and end just in case something happens to go wrong. It's fairly incredible what the human body and mind can do. I took off and I knew instantly, I'm going to crash, but if I let go right now, my body's going to flail and spin, but the bike was directly above me. So I would track with the bike, come down, and the bike would land directly on top of me. I don't really want a pedal or a peg stabbing me through the back. So I knew I had to hold on to the bike and finish the trick because 2/3 of the way through the trick is when I can level out, see the ground, and throw the bike sideways so it doesn't land on top of me. I went too fast at it. I hit the ramp really excited because I finished my double backflip on the first jump. I got amped up and said, I'm gonna go as high as I possibly can. I didn't touch my brakes and I went too high, too fast, and it changed my muscle memory and the speed of when I do the trick. And then the mind freaks out and sets you up. So I'm dropping. I essentially did a 25-foot belly flop and I threw my bike and I'm looking down, evaluating. I probably went through 3 or 4 different scenarios of how to hit the ground and minimize my injuries. So I go, okay, so typically I would run out of this, but if I run, I've had a few ACLs. I don't want to rip my knee in half again. Those are expensive. My foot hurts. This hurts. Don't forget, I rebuilt this shoulder at one point, so I don't want to land on that side. For some reason, it made sense to me that a perfect belly flop into the middle of the ramp would be the best idea because it would spread the impact out. So I positioned my body to belly flop and my right knee tapped the ramp just a hair before the rest of my body. Otherwise, I think I would have gotten away with maybe a broken rib or just knocked the wind out of me. And the second it hit, I could hear it pop. That particular injury didn't hurt until the doctor folded my leg in half.
While my break was a mid-shaft spiral femoral fracture, Chad's was straight across.
But having perfectly flat bone, when it tilted both directions, that sharp bone cut the inside of my quad, hamstring, and IT band, and it turned into a major scar tissue block where my quad later on turned into 2 sections of quad that were functioning while I was still competing. It was super odd. The body's amazing. And then we did dry needling, turned that scar tissue into Swiss cheese, broke it down, and I've got 1 full quad again. But it didn't hurt that bad until he folded my leg in half, and I had some choice words for him, and he ran away. Imagine that. I had broken my neck years before and had that fused. So I had 2 doctors on my neck. I had one on my arm, one on the other arm, one giving me an IV, another doc checking the other leg. So it was chaos in my room. And the other doc walked in, looked at my folder or my file and goes, yeah, possible broken leg. Let's check your tib fib. And just lifted it up. He just wasn't thinking. And this whole time I've got Travis Pastrana in the room next to me because he had shattered his foot. So now he's yelling at me from his room, making fun of me for yelling at the doctor and screaming at him. So those are our ER stories. They're fabulous. Most painful, it's probably number 2 for me. I shattered both my heels in 2015, and that's definitely my most painful. There's a lot of nerves in the foot.
We'll hear more about Chad's recovery later in this video, but I want to introduce you to Molly, another stranger I reached out to through Facebook. Leading up to my break, I was actually doing an ab workout challenge online with a group of women on Facebook around the country. I broke my femur around the same time we were supposed to turn in our after photos, so I posted pictures of my x-ray as my after photo, discouraged by the massive setback. Well, Molly commented and said she had broken her femur years ago. I asked her for advice and if she would be willing to share some of her experience with us.
We connected in this group, and it really helped me to know that you have had a very similar injury, in fact, a little bit more injured than I was, and you're 5 years removed from it. So how has that recovery process been?
The first year was horrendous. That's why I kind of reached out to you, is because when I was in that accident, I kind of entered not a great headspace. And if I would have had somebody to kind of relate to me and tell me, okay, I had this too, I felt the way you felt, I definitely think it would have helped me. But after that first year, when you start gaining back, you can walk by yourself again and you don't have to have help in and out of like the shower and the bathtub and stuff. Then you start getting confident and you start getting better.
Now, Molly had a much longer recovery than I expect to have.
I was on my way to a weights class with my 75-year-old mother-in-law, and somebody had gone into my lane to pass a semi and hit me head on. We were both going 65. We didn't see, he didn't see me, I didn't see him. I just remember, spinning. So I shattered my femur and my pelvis and little bones every, toes and finger, just little things.
While my fracture was a clean break, Molly's femur shattered, which required more intensive recovery.
They put the rod in, and then all those little bone fragments kind of get them together, from my understanding. And as your bones heal, those fragments will heal together.
Molly said she's blown away by how fast I'm up and moving, and it's really been an adjustment, but getting my mobility and independence back little by little has made me cry and smile more than once.
Even just simple things like getting up to go to the bathroom. Oh, it's like, what? Wait, what? I have to have assistance to go to the bathroom? Yeah. Just little things that are stripped from you it's a lot.
Molly and I have a shared love of being in the gym, so it really helped me to hear how her leg is now 5 years later. I asked her if she notices that rod at all.
I have a bump that comes out of my leg that is visible, which I've showed you before. That's the scar and the bump visibly. Really, if you just work on your flexibility and your mobility, obviously your flexibility is never going to be where it was before. I definitely can tell the difference when I do single leg stuff, but really, I'm young enough, you're young enough that we recovered well. So Ask me again in 20 years. I don't know.
For many people with metal implants, changes in atmospheric pressure, aka the weather, can cause discomfort in the bone.
If it's really, really hot outside, it almost feels like it kind of swells a little bit, but it doesn't hurt. I just am aware of it.
Implants used to be made of gold, silver, lead, and aluminum. I have a titanium rod, which is superior in the sense that it does not corrode in the human body and it's easily accepted by the body. Now, while I'm still waiting to really test out my bionic lifestyle, Molly says I should do what I can to try and prevent my left leg from becoming a stick. Unfortunately for her, she was immobile much longer than I was due to the extent of her injuries.
My leg was huge, swollen, looked like, I mean, as thick as a tree trunk. And then as soon as the swelling went away, it seemed like almost overnight, my leg was a stick because I had lost all of that muscle in my quad.
Now, the doctor told me I should bear partial weight on the injured leg, but since getting out of the hospital, I have been adamant about not sitting around. For several reasons. I didn't want to get a clot, I wanted to prevent atrophy as much as possible, and I wanted to stimulate blood flow to keep the rest of my body healthy. Muscle atrophy can begin after only a few days of disuse, and the extent of atrophy depends on the duration of the disuse at the cellular level. Now, thankfully, I think I can confidently say I'm out of the woods when it comes to clotting risk after surgery. For 3 weeks after surgery, though, the doctor had me inject myself twice daily with this terrible blood thinner. This was to reduce the risk of clotting, but this is one of the worst parts of recovery that I'm happily done with. Even Chad, who has broken more bones than I can count, can understand the pain associated with taking those shots.
I got 2 more days of these. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, Lovenox. I don't know why it says love in the name. These are terrible.
Wait, is that the blood thinner?
Yes.
Okay. I believe that is what right around the belly button site, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Twice a day. Twice a day. It burns. It burns. I have bruises all over my stomach.
I don't envy you, and you just gave me flashbacks. Lovenox.
Yeah.
It was bad enough getting stuck in a wheelchair. You can't walk. Everything hurts. But twice a day, I had to do it for, I think it was 3, maybe 3.5 months because I was stuck in a wheelchair. When I injured myself, I'm peak conditioning and working out all the time. And then 30 minutes later, I'm stuck on my back and I can't walk anymore. They go, yeah, you're high risk for blood clots. Twice a day for 3.5 months. That was the moment that I hated every single day. I'd sit there and I'd have it ready to go and take a big deep breath and go, oh, man.
Yeah.
For me, it was about a 25% ratio. 1 out of 4, I would hit the nerve and my stomach would feel like I just lit myself on fire. And the other ones would just be like the pinprick of a regular shot. But if you hit the nerve ending with that thing.
Yeah.
Now, one of the main reasons I reached out to Chad is because of something he said in that article from 2012. He originally wanted to get the rod out, and I asked him why he changed his mind on that.
I wasn't going to quit riding my bike. So if I'm going to put myself in that risky position again, I was worried that if I ever broke my femur again and the rod was in it, what my doctors had told me is when the rod is stuck in your leg and your leg breaks, instead of the leg breaking and floating, the rod holds it together. So when it breaks, it holds it, you bend the rod, and the bone where it should float away from itself shatters because it has nowhere to go. And then they described a really gruesome way of fixing that is they actually have to cut, or as he told me, fillet my leg open to cut the rod because it's bent in the middle of the leg, remove the rod from the middle, and then somehow try to glue the bone back together. And I went, you know what? I want that thing out because my favorite ramp is the mega ramp. I'm running the risk of doing it again. Then I realized I didn't want more downtime. So it would take an additional surgery.
Mm-hmm.
I went, I don't want to volunteer for more surgery. So if I happen to have surgery in that location or close to it again, I'll go ahead and have it removed if necessary, but otherwise I don't. And then my last injury was my shattered heels, and they had to replace my ACL, which would have been a good time to remove the rod, but I'd already decided I'm done competing. So I didn't want to add more healing and pain to what I was already going through.
I don't intend to quit what I love doing either. Being active is one of the biggest parts of my life. However, I'm still very much in the recovery phase.
Your physical therapy will be your number one aspect of getting yourself strong and back. It was right around the 6 or 7 month mark that I would say I was doing backflips on my bike again and actually riding at a point where I couldn't compete and get top 3 at X Games, but I was able to ride and look like a good bike rider again.
First, you're in a hospital bed and can't even get up to use the toilet. Next, you're told to start trying to bend your leg as soon as possible so the process isn't as painful.
I asked the same thing. I said, you seriously want me to walk on my leg with my body weight 5 to 10 days after I broke my femur in half? And they said, actually, what makes it grow together better is pressure of the bones pushing. The best way to do pressure is to actually walk on it, so your gravity is pushing down. And I went, okay, and that helps knit the bones back together.
Chad has retired from his BMX career, but he still rode for many years after his femur accident and suffered even worse pain, shattering his heels. So I asked him why he keeps riding.
Stubborn, and I love what I do. I also don't, I mean, no offense, but I don't really like real jobs. I like what I do. I've been riding a bike since I was 4 years old. Started competing when I was 8, and then I turned pro at 17. I didn't know any different. I love what I do. And it wasn't the people are like, oh, you're an adrenaline junkie. I like pushing the boundaries of seeing what I can make the human body do and inventing new things. So I was the first person to do this trick and that trick because I got creative and invented things that pushed my boundaries. It was awesome. And once you make it to a certain level, all of a sudden you're traveling around the world sharing your gift and your passion with other people that absolutely love what you do. And I was able to take my very selfish professional athlete development, and after X Games medals and some golds and things like that, all of a sudden you show up and people are excited you're there. Those are the most fulfilling things I've ever done, is do a half pipe demo at St. Jude's Children's Hospital, entertaining kids that are essentially on their deathbed, and we hand out a bunch of presents at Christmas. I've been over to military bases 13 times in the Middle East on a tour called Bikes Over Baghdad, and we build ramps and backflip over tanks and Humvees and do shows to boost morale. It was just fun to then give back. We risk death doing those things, but it's also those moments that make you feel unbelievably alive. That's part of us. I mean, what do you think is going to happen when you go to outer space? You're risking your life.
Oh, yeah.
People have asked if I will climb again, and while it's hard to think about it right now, I really do love climbing, and I'll likely try it again, but I might explore some other sports as well.
You just answered your own question, in case you're wondering. How am I going to get back out and rock climb? How am I going to approach sports? You're going to do it with more knowledge of what your body is telling you. You're already in pain, you're already hurting, and you didn't bother having it checked out. If you are already in that, that's the only reason your femur broke. So in the future, when you're not in pain and you're perfectly healthy, rock climb all you want. I don't wish that I ever went through that, and I hope nobody else ever does either. However, this is the choice that I made, self-inflicted, and I get to do things like this. I'm talking to you, helping you through your recovery. I used to get contacted all the time because I was more in media, TV, just with X Games and all the events. I have random kids reach out to me and say, hey, I broke my neck 2 weeks ago. You got back and started riding X Games again. Can you help me? And I'll jump on a call and talk to them. I've gone to dinner with some of these kids' whole families because they're like, you helped him recover from a broken neck, that he was in a wheelchair, and they told him he'd never ride a bicycle again. He was a dirt bike kid. Rode a bicycle, rode a dirt bike, and now he competes in like cross country, not jumping stuff. And they're all so thankful. People that shatter their heels reach out to me and go, hey, my doctor told me I'm done for life. I'll never walk again. I was like, they're full of shit.
Oh, and I'll also have a cool scar story, which I'm actually not sad about at all.
Well, I did have a guy one time come, and I was wearing shorts, and grocery store. And he comes up to me and he goes, "You broke your femur, didn't you?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "I know somebody with that exact same scar." And I just thought that was wild. It's such a distinct scar that when people see it, they're going to know that person broke their femur, which I think is kind of cool.
So how do Molly and Chad look at their injuries today?
I don't notice it the majority of the time because the things that bother my leg are, I think it's the scar tissue, because I had a hip insertion. Prior to my heels shattering, I had some problems with my calves, but I was able to run at that point, and I was running decent distance. After a while, it would feel like the rod's trying to pop out of my hip, which sounds disgusting. Since I don't run, my rod doesn't do anything for me anymore.
I always say it was definitely my wake-up call, because after that accident, I had strengthened my relationship with my family, with God. I became a lot more spiritual because I felt like I had been given a second chance. Also, I was into fitness before, but after you are in a wheelchair or you lose your ability to move your body, you become you don't take things for granted anymore. So it kind of pushed me to take care of myself more. I see it completely as a blessing in disguise.
As I continue to process my thoughts surrounding breaking my femur, it's amazing how many hurdles I've cleared in 4 weeks since the accident, mentally and physically. Having to jump through the scary hoop of surgery, trying to heal, and adapting to this much slower pace of life. It's not about the setback, it's about the comeback, and I know that this is going to make me stronger physically and mentally. So if you've made it to the end, thank you for watching this video. I hope this helps you or someone in your life. I also want to give a big thank you to those who have supported me during this incredibly difficult ordeal. It's insane to see the amount of money that you guys have raised on that GoFundMe, and it really helps. So I'm so thankful to everyone who has supported me along the way. I am getting better day by day, and you know, this too shall pass, and soon enough I'll be back on my bike and hopefully back on the climbing wall. And really, I mean, if you have something that's bothering you, something that's hurting you, don't take it from me, don't ignore it. I really wish that I hadn't ignored the pain that I was experiencing, and I've been known to be stubborn and impatient, and I tried to push through it, and here we are. So again, this is hopefully a better explanation of what happened. If you liked the video, please make sure to give it a like. Please share it with a friend if you are inspired by it, and make sure to subscribe to Ellie in Space if you aren't already. All right, back to the space content. I'll see you in the next video. For realsies. For reals. No. God, my cat is like whining and jumping on my leg. Seriously? Seriously? Oh. I'm doing a cold read. I really hope this works out, because this shit is hard to set up alone. I sure hope this looks okay. I sure hope. I sure hope. I can't see it. I can't see it. I can't see it. Now, Molly had a much longer recovery than I expect to have. It's for opening boxes. Molly said she's blown away by how fast I'm up and moving, and wow, this prompter's going like real fast. Note to self, do not leave the sound bites in there. If this is like off center, I'll be mad. I'll be so mad. People have asked if I will climb again. I sure hope that that is not off center. Oh my God. gosh, let's see how bad this looks.